People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
I told you that the man who is coming to this year's festival will put us back on the literary map. The man that vanished after the publication of his masterpiece.
I know who you are.
You do?
The mysterious
Shriver.
Shriver.
Shriver?
Shriver, I thought he was dead.
Bring Shriver and bring a crowd. Because this is the last chance for this festival.
They think I'm someone else. I'm not a writer.
Everyone's a writer these days. When's the last time you were in a Starbucks?
My pleasure to attend your most esteemed and prestigious festival, which is totally my thing. Also is the prize a car. Okay, well.
Are you Professor Cleary?
So you ready for this?
No.
Here you are.
Here I am.
Unless the real Shriver is still in hiding.
Something about you just doesn't smell right.
I need a drink.
I need you to behave for 3 days. Can you do that? And there's no car.
Man needs a whiskey.
I need you to be the man who wrote one brilliant novel.
I'm on to you.
I'm not Shriver! We really have to go to this party.
She's the key benefactor for the festival.
Mr. Shriver, come and see my library.
This does not appear to be a library.
Talk to me about literature.
You! Smoke! That's not good.
This is ridiculous.
Who is this guy?
I'm Shriver.
You imposter!
You, my friend, are the imposter.
This shit is wild.
Can you honestly tell me that you haven't been lying to me?
That's a complicated question.
Would the real Shriver please step forward? Can we please put an end to this buffoonery?
What is up with me?
Shriver!
This is one of the great literary hoaxes of all time.
Are you talking about me or him?
Hey folks, welcome to a special episode of The Projection Booth. On this episode, I am talking with Michael Maren. He is the director of A Little White Lie. It's a brand new comedy that is kind of making the rounds out there. Check it out, and I hope you enjoy the interview. I am so curious about your career because you've done a little bit of everything. Can you tell me a little bit about you, and especially even before the screenwriting career, because you, like I said, you've done so much, especially with the reporting.
It's not like I did these massive tectonic upheavals in my career. It's that one thing led to another. And very naturally, I found myself, and in a weird way, if I want to tell this as a story, it all starts with film. I'm old enough to remember when you just couldn't watch a film anytime you wanted to, and you had to wait for something to show up on TV or end up at a local art house theater or something like that. One of my earliest memories is watching black and white movies on our shitty TV with my dad, and he liked a lot of those old sword and sandal films that they used to call them, Jason and the Argonauts and stuff like that. But also he loved Beau Geste, the African Queen, and Zulu, and actually both versions of Beau Geste. There's the original one, what I'm going to say was a Clark Gable. It's not Clark Gable. Anyways, or the original one, and then they remade it with Telly Savalas years later. I got into the whole world of Africa, and not Tarzan crap like that. French Foreign Legion always seemed really cool to me. When I graduated from college, I didn't worry about getting a job. I just went to the Peace Corps, and I went to Africa. And I spent 2 years there teaching in a rural secondary school in Kenya. And I wanted to stay because I really loved being there. And I worked for years. I worked with a relief organization for a while, driving all over East Africa, doing stuff in Sudan and Ethiopia and Kenya. And then I still wanted to stay. And I got hired by the U.S. government to go to Somalia, where I spent another year in 1981. And that's when I started getting very political about what was going on because I really disagreed with American policy. And I wrote a report to the U.S. government at the time just saying, in essence, we're really fucking this country up and we need to stop it. And that segued me into journalism. And that started my writing career. And I always wanted to write anyway. So I started writing op-eds and I started reporting, and I ended up back in Africa as a journalist for a long time. There's only so many years you do that. I remember being 35 years old in Somalia during the war, and I went back to Somalia when the Civil War started, and being one of the older people in the press corps there. But I stayed, and I wrote a book about it called The Road to Hell, which was about American policy, the Cold War. That book got optioned by HBO. I wanted to write the screenplay, and HBO originally was like, not, because I was thinking, let me try this other thing. And HBO wasn't so cool about that. They let the option expire. Somebody else optioned that. And then about another year later, when I had given up entirely on writing screenplays, regimes change at these places all the time, and they have no institutional memory. A guy named Stephen Tolkien, who's Stephen's well-known writer and director, and he wanted to do about Africa and all of that. And I said, funny thing, I have a story that I wrote. It's fictional, but I think it'd make a great screenplay. And Stephen read it and he agreed. And he went back to HBO, and they were going to offer me a bunch of money to buy the story. I said, I don't want a bunch of money. I want to write the screenplay. I want to make that jump. And they offered me more money to go away. Stephen stood up for me and said, you know what? I think this guy can write the screenplay. So we together wrote the script. This was 90, I'm going to say 99 or late 98. And that's back when a writer's quote meant something. You used to get quote, your quote plus 10. So I got in at Stephen's quote, and he'd been doing it for a long time. And that was pretty cool. The movie never got made. Had been another regime change at HBO, and they flushed everything that the ancient regime had come up with down the toilet. Plus that, I think they found the story not uplifting, which is my style. But I went on from there, and I got hired to write any number of screenplays. I wrote some on spec, and I actually, very early on, I had adapted a novel. My wife is a novelist. She had actually written a memoir that Reese Witherspoon, before she was Reese Witherspoon, wanted to produce. Reese and I went together to Phoenix Pictures, Mike Metaboy's company, and I thought the producer who was with me was going to pitch it. So Reese and I are sitting on this little couch. Everyone has their little chit-chat, and then the producer says, well, Michael's going to talk about the film now. And I was like, I just stepped in it. It was disgusting. It was like, stumbled through this thing. So I'm standing down in the lobby with Reese, and I'm really apologetic. I'm going to have to pull this together. We're going to go pitch it somewhere else. And Mike Metaboy comes down the elevator, his building across from Sony, and he's got his tennis whites on. He's off to play tennis, and he was flirty with Reese, so he slowed down. And I, standing in the lobby with the pressure off, just pitched it again. And then he looked at me and said, all right, I'll call your agent. And they bought it and never made it, which is how it happens. But they came to me with another project that they wanted me to write. And it was an adaptation of another memoir that was by a writer named John Hockenberry. That it was about being a paraplegic in war zones. And that they thought because of the war zone connection, I would get it. But they never pulled the trigger on that. And when their option expired, I re-optioned that book myself. I called Moving Violations, wrote the screenplay on spec. And I've sold the screenplay twice. Never got made for books full of reasons. But it got me into a lot of rooms, and I sold a bunch of scripts to other people. But the money was good, but you get tired of doing that. And it was a producer I was with who I'd been working with on, producer named Peter Newman, who owned the rights to the Janis Joplin story. I was working on the Janis Joplin pick with Peter. We had Milos Forman attached to direct, and Zoe Deschanel was going to play Janis. That got bollocksed up for reasons I'm way too complicated to get into here. But I brought Peter another script later that I wanted to make, and we're talking about finding a director, and he finally said to me, why don't you direct it? And I was like, I don't know how to direct a movie. He said, you wrote it. You know what it looks like. You know what's going to happen. It wasn't that I ended up directing, but I ended up thinking, yeah, I'm getting older. I don't want to do that. I don't want to just keep writing screenplays for money. It's really unsatisfying. And so I wrote a script called The Short History of Decay about a young writer dealing with his own failings as a writer and as a human being, and dealing with his mother's cancer and his father's stroke. And then there's some autobiographical elements in there. But I put a script that I thought I could make for very little money. And I got the script out, and Linda Lavin got attached, Harris Yulin, Brian Greenberg, and Benjamin King, who also plays the journalist in A Little White Lie, and shot the film for about $400,000. And it got a lot of love, which was nice. It didn't make any money, but it made it easier for me to then move on. I know, and it was soon after, right after I had wrapped A Short History of Decay, I walked into a bookstore in Lenox, Massachusetts, and I heard Chris Belden reading, a writer named Chris Belden reading from his book called Shriver, which became A Little White Lie in the movie. And it took years to get that going.
Yeah, what were some of the challenges? Why did it take so long? Of course, there was a global pandemic somewhere in there.
It was more than that. First of all, I'm a really slow writer. Many frustrated people will tell you that. I just take my time. I'm easily distracted and go off on other tangents and start 5 or 6 screenplays at the same time and put them aside until I can get back to them. But also, you can't, I know from being in the business, I had a kid in private school and had life and all of this stuff going on and mortgage and grown-up stuff. You can't just be focused on one project. I've got to have 5 or 6 things in various stages at any time, because the lesson, if I hadn't learned the lesson by then, I would have been an idiot. That most things, even when everything looks like all the tumblers have fallen into place, that door still ain't going to open for you. So it took me a while to get that out. But when I did get a version of the script out in 2015 or so, it got a lot of love. And suddenly I was getting calls from actors' agents. And there's something that happened, and this was a hard-earned lesson. There are producers out there, or people who call themselves producers, who would tell you they want to make your movie, they have the money, they want to invest in your movie, and they'll give you a good option money on a script, but it turns out they don't have the money. All they want to do is control the script for a year so they can go out and find the money. That's a lesson to any screenwriter who gets an option on a script. There's a lot of people doing that who just simply want to control your script so that they can then try to produce it. And so if they can't produce it after you sign away a year on something like that, if they can't find financing, suddenly it's your fault because there's something wrong with your script. And my response to that is that, then why'd you give me $5,000 for it? So I learned that the hard way. I lost a year doing that. We went through some other things with some other producers on it. We were moving ahead at one point, and the script got pre-sold at Cannes as a film, and there was financing, but the last pieces of that didn't come through. And then finally somebody came up saying they want to produce the film. One of the people connected to that producer, not that producer, brought Michael Shannon aboard. And I went into pre-production on it in 2018 in Savannah, Georgia, where we were going to shoot it at a budget that had been given to me. And I was with my DP and with a line producer with the budget that we were told we had. Sometime after spending nearly a month doing pre-production and setting it up, the producer who had promised the money said, "That's too much money for this film. You can't do it for X, you got to do it for Z." It was the end of the year. I refused to renew the option on my script, and I asked Chris to hold back on renewing the option on the underlying material. The funny little irony about that for me is that had we gone ahead and made that movie, I probably would have died, because unbeknownst to me at the time, I had cancer. I started come around January, in the beginning of the year, I started feeling things that I know if I had been in the middle of continued pre-production and then production and started post-production on a film, I absolutely would have ignored, because you can convince yourself of anything. And so I had a great cast attached to it and some really good funny people. And when all of that happened, obviously I had several surgeries and as well as really harsh chemo. Learned that I looked pretty good bald if I have to lose all my hair, so that was good. But it took me an entire year to get through that. And we lost the rest of the whole cast except for Michael Shannon. Michael stuck with the project. I think he very much, he'll have to answer that himself, but when someone asks him, but I think he very much related to the character Shriver. He seemed very at home playing it. I didn't have to give him a lot of directing in terms of playing that character. So with Michael as the base at the beginning of 2020, we rebuilt the cast. Kate Hudson joined, and then things started to click in, because with Kate there, the finance people were ready to pay, and we got the money we needed. And then Don Johnson, Zach Braff, and Emmett Walsh, and everybody else. Divine Joy Randolph was wonderful on it. So Jimmy Simpson, the rest, everybody just showed up. In fact, I was turning people away. We had just went nuts. People who wanted to be in this movie. We started shooting late February of 2020. There was an article in the Atlantic Monthly called "Cancel Everything" that came out early in March, and I remember it was between setups on set. And I walk out we were shooting in this office suite, and I walk out in the hallway, and Kate Hudson was standing in the hallway staring at her phone. And she said, "Come over here." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Did you read this article called Cancel Everything?" And I was there. "Yeah, I read it, but I think we're okay. It's going to be fine." They're in rapid succession that same afternoon. It's like suddenly Tom Hanks announces he has COVID, and the NBA cancels their season. This is all one wonderful day. So we shut down. A couple of the guys on set really were like, "Yeah, come on. We're going to power through." Honestly, I probably would have too, because I'm an idiot in that way. It wasn't going to happen. The Screen Actors Guild got involved, and virtually everything. We were one of the last films standing in LA, actually. I think we tried to shoot one more day after that. But a chunk of what we shot that day actually isn't useful. You could see there was suddenly everybody, we were wiping down all the props between a retake and all that, which of course we learned we didn't have to really do, but nobody knew what was going on. It was 400 days before we were able to pull the cast back together and before we had everything together to pick up. We stopped with 8 days left to film, and we could only get the cast for 6. And not only that, it was an assistant director's nightmare, thankfully not mine. Kate Hudson was shooting for Apple at the time. She was on a TV show, truth be told, and Apple let her go for 6 days. And Zach Braff was doing a movie for Disney. They would not let him go. So we had to shoot Zach on a weekend. We had to take all the Zach scenes and push them into the last weekend. Divine Joy Randolph could not be there. She was off shooting something else and was previously committed. AJ Naomi King was 9 months pregnant. She couldn't travel. We were shooting outside of Los Angeles. We were shooting in Redlands. So we shot a body double. And then later when she had the baby and everything later, a couple months later, I went back to LA and we shot her on a green screen and stuck her in the movie because she had a couple of really key moments at the end of the film. She shows up, and without that scene, nothing else makes sense. Losing Divine, her character, Delta Jones, meant that a couple of the scenes, I had to rewrite a couple of scenes and also there's one scene that we shot anyway that she's not there in the scene. The scene, to my mind, lost a little energy because she's such a presence on screen. But you know what? I think we have a really good film, and I'm really happy with it. People are really liking it, and it's finally coming out, which is great.
Were you able to start some of the post-production during the shutdown, or were you just completely hands-off?
You can do the editing remotely now. Amazing software. I was sitting at this desk with an editor. I used 2 editors on it. One of them was upstate New York. The other one was in Los Angeles. We could work on the same screen, which is like totally cool. I spent time with both of them. I'm sure I spent personal time with the editors I think those personal connections are really important. But so that was fine. My family was still isolating here in Connecticut, and everybody was in their own place. And so we got the edit done. It took a lot longer than if I'd actually just been sitting in the room the entire time. Also, I like to edit myself. I like to turn the knobs and do all that. I went back to LA and did the sound and color and all of that. Spent a couple of weeks in LA doing that. And then it took a while to get the film out. It took a while to deliver it. Things were I think that the COVID delay caused a break in I don't know, some of the stuff that I don't have anything to do with, honestly.
When were you finally able to see the whole thing together?
Probably last summer. I had it, and then there was the question of a distributor and trying to sell the film, which again is not anything I have anything to do with. I don't know how that goes. I don't know how certain decisions were made. I don't know. I was told it's hard to sell the film of our writers, some people with the computers and the marketing numbers. And I think it's a film that doesn't neatly fit into a category. It's a comedy. I think there is a rom-com element to it, but it's sure as hell not a rom-com. Not that there's anything wrong with rom-coms. I can weep with the best of them and watch those movies. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Love that. I watched all of Kate's movies before, and I actually watched with the actors. The main actors. I try to watch all their stuff before. Just because all actors have quirks. I mean, you just got to know what they are. But I don't think this movie is not a rom-com by any means. There's com, but there isn't a lot of rom. And although there's literary obsession, which is a world I know really well. And I know the literary world. I just got back from the Savannah Book Festival yesterday. I was in Savannah, Georgia Book Festival. I was with my wife, and we're walking around, and we would just point out things to each other that are like straight out of the movie. I showed the film last spring. We actually run a writers' conference in Positano, Italy every year called Sirenland. We bring 40 writers and 40 writing students mostly, but some of them they're all writers, and 4 A-list writer teachers. And we bring everybody to what is maybe the nicest hotel in the world. And we spend a week there writing and eating and drinking and talking about literature. And I showed the film to that group of people, and they were laughing all over the place because there's some inside jokes. There's stuff there that may go over your head if you don't know writers or hang around with writers or go to. But that's a pretty good population of people in this country. One of the kind of funny lessons in the film that goes on is that everybody wants to be a writer. Everybody's got a novel, and everybody in the film who Shriver runs into, say, trying to press a manuscript into his hands. And there's a line I wrote in there that's really something that my wife is a very well-known writer. Every day the UPS truck drives up the driveway, and people are sending manuscripts and galleys and things because they want blurbs on the back. She's just done a moratorium on blurbing. You like to help young writers, but on the one hand, on the other hand, you can't just keep doing it. But a writer walks up to Shriver and says, "Hey, could you just write something? In fact, I could even just write it myself." And we know that happens all the time. Writers say, "We'd love a blurb from you. We know you're really busy. So if you don't mind, here's a few suggestions for things you could say." Word to God, I'm not making that. It's art and the business of art. That's what we've been talking about in terms of the movie today. And you can't separate them, and you make your compromises along the way. I think making an independent film is really getting up there every day and deciding what you can compromise on and what you can't. You can't do everything you want. And it's probably even true for big studio films. I mean, if you've got a $50 million budget, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff you want to do that you can't do. I mean, you've got a $100 million budget, and I'm sure, Jesus, I really like to. I don't know. I don't ever plan to direct a $100 million film. I'll keep it in. This is a good budget range. I like it.
Had you worked with actors before your first feature?
No, but I watch a lot of movies. There's that ad. But I've seen directors on TV. Like Day for Night, that Truffaut's film about a director is one of my favorite films. I've watched it 50 times. So I learned a lot from that. And it's very accurate about what it's like. My mentor as a director in all of this, a man who my wife and I and his wife went out to dinner with every Sunday night for more than a decade, was a man named Milos Forman.
I have heard of him.
Yeah, he's gotten around. And Milos, I actually have a videotape I took of Milos asking him about what advice he would give me. We had talked a lot about directing, and I'd been with him. But Milos had this phrase. Milos said to me, and I won't try to do his Czech accent because it sounded so much better in his Czech accent than it will when I say it. He said, "Don't talk to the actors too much. You'll just confuse their heads." Okay, I tried. That was more like Arnold Schwarzenegger than Czech. You know what I'm saying? Milos, his point was, it's all in the casting. You've got to cast the right people. And you've got to trust that they understand the role, that they will read, because they're agreeing to be in your movie, understand the roles, and they'll bring it. They'll do what they do best. We had a table read for it, and I had one table read with the whole cast, and then I had a separate table read a little bit later with just me, Mike, and Kate, the three of us. I'm going over stuff about the relationship between those two characters, and we talked out a lot of stuff. But beyond that, I just remember the times I talked to actors about scenes and what they were going to do. I talked to Don Johnson about fine-tuning his character. The character that Don ends up playing in the film is a little different from the character I had in mind. But it was clear that Don wanted to do it he read it a different way. And I pushed him a little bit one way, but he played that, and he played the kind of wannabe poet guy who's been teaching English for years at this college pretty well. And he did it in his own way. And I think I changed his performance a little bit in terms of my take on the character. I had one talk with Mike about I think one of my favorite scenes in the film is when Michael Shannon is reading the excerpt from his own book. I wrote a chunk of the book myself to try to understand the Shriver character. And I took a walk with Mike, and before we shot the scene, and I said, I just want to tell you a story. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. But I was reading an article once, and at a certain point in reading the article, I had a weird, funny feeling. Something just started to come to me, and I thought, I think I wrote this. It's just this paragraph in the middle of this piece. And I went back through some of my early clips, and sure enough, someone had changed a lot of the words. It wasn't exactly what I wrote, but I had gotten plagiarized. And changing the adjectives didn't change that for me. And I think every writer has their own take on it. You have a signature style. So I said, as he starts to read, he's going to start to feel familiar with the writing. That's all. But that's really real. And I left it at that. And then he was brilliant.
I love him in everything that he does. And he just always gives such a great performance. And I love this where he gets to play slightly comic, but then the scenes of him speaking to himself, those are gold.
Yeah, that was risky, I thought, to do that. But I think it really worked. I wasn't prepared if it didn't work to cut all those scenes out. But I ended up thinking it was really important. And I think it really worked. We shot those with me reading against Mike. And so I was a little nervous about doing that because I'm no actor, but I did my best. Yeah, and it is comic, and it's very subtly comic, and a lot of it's in the timing. I think he's got great comic timing. And he's a straight man through a lot of it, but he's really funny. He's really funny doing that. The young woman who plays the hotel clerk, it's a small role, but I think she's terrific. And there's a couple of exchanges they have that I just think are great. And they're short and they're to the point, but they play off each other really nicely. And the other thing I want to say about Michael Shannon, and I've been on enough film sets, he's the most generous actor I've ever seen on a film set. I've seen actors when it's not their coverage, when they're acting, but the camera's on the other, I suppose your listeners know this, when the camera's on the other actor, kind of hold back because they save the really, I'm going to hammer this home for when the camera's on them. Michael brought it with every performance. When the camera would be on another actor, he still just laid it all out there and gave the other actors everything they needed to work with. And a lot of actors do that, but they give 90%. Like Michael gave 100% every time.
And Kate Hudson, she just seems so effortless in the way that she acts. Just it feels like she just walked onto the set and just started.
Yeah. When she did, kind of. Kate's a total pro. She was perfect in the role. I never seen her do anything quite like this before. There isn't a lot of comedy coming out of her there, but she's so key to everything else that's going on around. And you just really believe her. And she's a writer who's stuck teaching creative writing at this shitty college. You believe every moment of that look with all of her acting. And I would be standing there on set just watching her going like, wow. And that kind of semi-final scene when she and Michael are walking away from the gazebo after the whole thing with the cops and everything else goes down. That moment is perfect. But both she and Mike are great. Both she and Mike would, if I was happy with something, Michael more than Kate, but Kate did it too, where they'd go, hold off, I want to do this again. Michael would just put a finger up in the air and he would just go, one more time. Because I'm thinking, how is the assistant director is looking at me just tapping his watch like, and Michael's one more and I'll go, all right, we're going again, keep rolling and let's go. And there was all that tension on set time and people like that. And I think we had a great set. I do my best I learned that from me and a couple of other sets I've been on. It's just the director has the directing style kind of filters down through everything. And that's really a big part of the job. I made sure I knew the names of the grips and everybody else on the set. I didn't second, third day in there. I'm bad at people's names, generally speaking, but just trying to create a really good atmosphere because it's independent film is shot under a ton of pressure.
It has taken you more than 8 years for this to come to fruition.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's changed a lot throughout the years and just the ideas have had to change. And you talked about how you couldn't have everybody on set all when you wanted to. But ultimately, for me as a viewer, it all comes together. It all feels very seamless. And it was a very satisfying film.
That's the idea, isn't it? All those pieces and the match cutting from something you shot 400 days earlier. But it worked. And I think everybody believed in the project. Everybody had a good time. I think there was a real sense of accomplishment when we wrapped that film our last filming day was nearly 24 hours. We ended at 4:00 in the morning, having shot that restaurant scene, and people were wiped out. And the idea was we were going to go back and have a wrap party. And then that didn't happen. Everybody was asleep.
What happens with the movie now? It's a VOD, DVD, those kind of things?
It's theaters right now. It's opening in selected theaters, I believe is the nomenclature, meaning it's probably not playing at a theater near you. It's playing in New York, it's playing in Los Angeles, it's playing in some major metropolitan areas, but at the same time, it's available on VOD. And and then eventually it'll end up on a streamer, but I don't know. Again, nobody asked my opinion about any of that. I've got new projects. I'm doing everything I can. I love this movie, and I want people to see it. You can't rest. It's business. I've got 2 books I'm looking at. One of them for TV series off here. I've got a screenplay I'm past deadline on that I need to turn in for another director. Agnieszka Holland, the Polish director, is directing it, and I'm writing a script based on a book that my wife wrote.
Oh, wow.
So that's all coming together, and I've got another script that I need to finish, and I'd like to be directing it by next fall. We'll see if that can happen. I know I'm given the amount of time that it takes to assemble something like this, but I'm hoping that A Little White Lie gets enough love, and that people will, it'll get a little easier this time. But you know what? It doesn't. It never gets easier.
How is that adapting your own wife's work? It seems like a surefire case for divorce.
Yeah, she also writes screenplays to that novelist mostly. And this book is a memoir. The one I'm adapting is called Inheritance. And what happened was the producers hired a screenwriter to write, and the script didn't do much. And it was during COVID, and I was home. I didn't know what else I was going to be doing. And I said, let me take a whack at it. I just do it for fun. So I turned the script around, and the script attracted Agnieszka Holland, who wanted to direct. But Agnieszka said she had some changes she wanted in the film. So I said, all right, I'll do that. Then they hired me to make those changes. So now I'm getting paid to do the script, which is good because we like it. And so my wife understands that I need to make stuff up and change stuff and streamline stuff and leave out good stuff to make the story work. She just adapted another novelist book, and she had to do the same thing there. And she's got a novel she's written since then that she just wrote the pilot for. And we work together on all this stuff, and we read each other's work. And I'm her in-house editor. She's my in-house editor. Ideally, one couple is a lawyer earning a good salary, and the other one's the one who's just taking chances and trying to write stuff. But she's not a lawyer, and I'm not either. So we do okay.
Mr. Maren, is there a good place for people to keep up with you and your work?
The main place I put stuff out is Instagram, which is at @mmaren, Maren. I have stuff from the film up there. I have stills from the film I'll put there. When I had cancer, I did a whole photo project because my mind was too addled to actually write. And that's all further down on my feed. That's probably the best place, I would say. Maren. MichaelMaren.com will get you to my website, but I don't really do anything with that anymore. People don't go to websites anymore.
Mr. Maren, thank you so much for your time. This was so nice talking with you.
Oh, great. I've enjoyed this. It's been fun, and thank you for help spreading the word on this movie. There's no advertising budget, really. I don't think you're going to see ads for it on TV shows or anything like that. So it's got to be word of mouth or Letterboxd or Rotten Tomatoes or wherever you get your people ranting about movies.
Well, hopefully we'll get a few more eyes on this.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks very much, Bud.
Lies, you're telling me that you'll be true. Lies, that's all I ever get from you. Tears, I shed 1,000,000 tears for you. Tears, and now you're loving someone new. Someday I'm gonna be happy, but I don't know when such a smart girl, and I'll believe what you say. But who do you think you are, girl, to lead me on this way? Hey, lies, lies, I can't believe a word you say. Lies, lies, are gonna make you sad someday. Someday you're gonna be lonely, but you won't find me around. Lies, lies, are breaking my heart. Someday I'm gonna be happy, but I don't know when just now. Lies, lies, are breaking my heart. You think that you're such a smart girl, and I'll believe what you say. But who do you think you are, girl, to lead me on this way? Hey, lies, lies, yeah, baby, I can't believe a word you say. Lies, lies, are gonna make you sad someday.